acknowledge the gathered people who are the traditional custodians of this land. I'd also like to pay my respects to the elders, both past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who may be present here this afternoon. Moving on, I'd like to introduce our three artists who are finalists at this year's Paddington Art Prize. Joe Frost, winner of the Safala College Prize with his work Railway Garden. Laura Matthews, whose work Steel Edge we can see on the wall behind us. And Nick Collerson, whose work Caught on Surveillance, while no one is looking, can be seen at the far end of the gallery on the right-hand side. Before we move on to the talk, the conversation, I'd like to introduce Teresa Sargent of Fine Art Imaging, who's provided the $1,000 People's Choice Award for this year. Teresa, you want to come up and present the award?
Well, thank you to Marlene and Paddington Art Prize for the opportunity to be a sponsor. It's a prestigious prize and the standard of paintings just gets better every year. Congratulations to Laura Matthews for winning the People's Choice Award. Thank you. Thanks, very well done. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'll do a few more introductions so people who don't know who you guys are know a little bit more about you. Joe has a Master of Fine Arts from COFA and has been involved in numerous solo and group exhibitions since 1994. He is the winner of several prizes, including the Alex Perry Prize for Drawing, the University of New South Wales Australian Postgraduate Award, and of course this year's Safala Cottage Prize here. Laura studied at the University College in London and has been exhibiting her work since the mid-1980s. She is the winner of the Regional Art Prize Hunters Hill Art Prize, that might be a bit of a double-up, People's Choice in the Tattlesall's Art Prize, and has been a finalist in many more awards and competitions, including 4 times at the Paddington Art Prize.
I just want to naked nude in my head.
And Naked and Nude Art Prize winner.
I've got to mention that.
Oh, for sure. Nick was born in Canada, attended the National Art School, and has been exhibiting his work since 2010. He is a winner of the Macquarie Bank Emerging Artist Award in 2014, has twice been a finalist in the Paddington Art Prize, and also a finalist in the Doug Moran Portrait Prize. Thank you again for coming. Now this is something that Marlene couldn't come today. She usually would take the talk, which for reasons for being a bit under the weather. So a couple of questions that she would like to start with, or we'll start with, is when do you find inspiration for your work? Should we start with Joe?
Yeah. So once upon a time I would have probably answered that I travel to locations and draw there and paint there if we're talking about landscape work or work that is about place. So the experience of being in cities, industrial areas, not to the exclusion of more, rural or other kinds of natural spaces, but really I'm a suburban person. So for me, that's where I've often found my subject matter. But how that actually arises these days is quite different from how it once would have taken form. So where once I used to go out on location and draw or paint, and even then I would have had a dialogue between what I did on site and what I did in the studio. But these days I suppose inspiration or the finding of an image occurs much more in the studio as an activity unto itself, referring to lived experience. I mean, maybe a way to describe or explain what happens is to talk about a few years back, probably about 10 years ago, I rented a new place to live, and it was a unit, it was an upstairs unit with a view out onto a pocket of Sydney Harbour, one of the old last unrenovated blocks in Balmain. And I knew that place because I knew what I was seeing out the window because I'd seen it from different viewpoints already. I'd drawn it, I'd painted it, I'd been there. But from this new kind of nest elevated somewhat above the street, I saw the elements of that place that I knew in a different configuration. And I thought, great, I'll be able to sit here and paint, look out the window, and I actually did that. But the experience of looking, and also the layered experience of memory and prior experience, the coming together of all of those layers of perception, actually comes together better if I treat the image more like an abstract painting than a painting that is directly representational. So I suppose what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way is that these days I go into the studio and juggle with the elements of painterly construction, with colour, with shape. I build spaces, and sometimes with a sense of subject matter, sometimes that deviates into it becoming something else. So for example, in the case of this painting called Railway Garden, I had in mind those kind of funny leftover spaces beside railway tracks where some weeds grow and there's a kind of a moment of nature asserting itself within the urban scape. Not an actual garden, but a place that I choose to deem a garden. But it's not, I couldn't pinpoint it to a particular place. It's a kind of place experience filtered through painting, and the painting acquires a kind of finality, or when the elements seem to have the right, the right sensation attached to them. So, inspiration begins with sensation in place, but it's channeled through something else in the studio.
Well, I don't think I quite like much of that, really. I mean, you did a very sort of expose of the process, I suppose. I mean, for me, it is about seeking out a place to paint about. Often, recently it's been Tasmania, but they're not specific representations. They are synthesised through drawing, through photographs, and largely from memory and kind of sort of visceral experiences that you have within a particular place. Having moved from the UK and having painted only ever from life, for trained in a life of a slave for 7 years, I really wanted to change the way in which I work, because that was a very lengthy, very slow process, a very intense process of observing, mixing colour, moving things very slightly, kind of talking about tone, talking about colour and its different effects, painting about light. But when I came here, it seemed to me that it was a moment to actually move my practice into the landscape. Because that was a huge jump for me, having painted everybody from the nude, from still life, inventing these whole worlds that I could then explore. But then coming here, I thought, well, I can paint the landscape. That's what I'm going to do. And it became about that. But the experience of having painted from life for that amount of time is really, it informs my work, it informs the drawing, it informs the way I think about building a painting, which is a very exploratory process for me. I never really quite know how I'm going to start, or how it's going to end up, or what it's going to look like, or what I'm actually painting about. It's always kind of quite a kind of a new experience. So that's really how I work now. I work in the studio from images, but also just from my imagination. There's nothing in the world that looks like that, the painting. It's a kind of, it's part remembered, part enhanced. It's a whole process of synthesizing ideas and a kind of narrative almost about what it is that you've experienced and seen. That's really, that's a very clear analysis of what it is that I'm inspired by. But a place, a vision, like water, like strips of water, light on water, that kind of punctuation that allows you to punctuate the structure of the canvas. Sorry.
Let it go. It's your
Bear with me, I can't go into my voice, just going to hold out, but I'll do my best. There's a couple of ways that, I think I appreciate both the answers we've been given, the process aspect of it. I think that's kind of, I think anyone who's been painting for a long time will really kind of can maybe relate to the quote by Chuck Close, which is very good telling about this. It says, inspiration is for amateurs. The rest you just get on with working. And I think that that working part of it is kind of, that's where things come from. That said, for me, in terms of motifs, I am extremely open, and my artistic practice is largely about creativity itself. It's kind of part of that creative process of just seeing. And as I sit here, I can see the shadows on the floor here, and I would very happily start that as a starting point for a painting. So for me, I'm really open to any possible thing in the entire universe as the beginning point for a painting. For me, the only limitation is my creativity in terms of resolving that. That said, I might start a painting with something that might not work. I'm happy to let that stuff not work as well. When I finish a painting, I have to work for me. It has to have a bit of mystery for me as well. Hopefully a bit of mystery for someone who I'm going to share it in the world.
Resolved in an unresolved way.
Well said.
How do you know when the painting's finished? What's that last, on Laura, I can sort of, I don't know, to me, maybe that spray can, the cloud might have been the end of that, how did you know?
It's a moment of flourish.
Yeah, how do you know that this is it, I've finished?
I don't think I think I undercook paintings all the time and possibly overcook them. So I think for me that is a really difficult moment. Often it's just fatigue and annoyance with the whole process. And I think, is it resolved? I don't know. Maybe it is. But then I might send something out into the world and it may come back unsolved. And I think, well, I understand that it's really not resolved. That I didn't push it hard enough. I didn't take it far enough. I didn't maybe push it over the line sort of in a way that might feel more uncomfortable than happy. It was not I wanted to abandon it probably before I should have. And there may be, and the danger with that, when I used to teach, I used to say to students, look, sometimes you've got to just push something so that you actually wreck it, that you let go, because often in a painting there'll be moments in that picture that you like, that you cherish. There'll be a piece of paint or a piece of colour or some relationship that you think, I really like that, I'm enjoying that. But that might be the one moment that's actually delaying the progress of the whole thing. So you have to sort of be able to kind of sometimes push through those nicer moments, and where the harmony's working, where it's all kind of singing along and humming along quite nicely, to take it to another level. And I think, so for me, actually knowing that is actually always slightly eluded me in terms of when something is done. It can't be done to my satisfaction, and then months later I look at it again and think, actually it's not finished at all. Why did I even think it was? So a fresh pair of eyes can often be the thing that really screws you up. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. The question of when it's finished is an easy one to get wrong. But I think what I probably look for, or hope to experience, is that the painting takes over and tells me something back. In other words, that I'm not. I'm surprised by what I've found, and yet it seems like a resolution, or at least you know what I'm saying?
A point that happy to stop.
No, it's more that it's gone beyond intention, and it's getting better it's getting more interesting than it should. It's almost like if I sometimes you think, what am I trying to do here? I'm trying to realise the image I'd like to paint. Mental image.
So do you know that?
Well, sometimes I think I have a mental image and sometimes I don't, but in either case, the painting has to stand independent of a concept and declare its own tangible sensation. I think the word sensory and sensation is really important in painting, or in the kinds of paintings that I like. It has to have a unitary, a singular but complex unfolding, if you see what I mean. Not to be too bitsy, but to have enough to keep things, to keep the eye and mind engaged. And indeed, eye and mind, that's a part of it too. It's not just something that's pretty, it's got to be something that, sometimes it's like a puzzle,
Do you find that if you leave work and come back to it, you know, that you have that kind of objectivity that allows you to
Yeah.
push it to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, that painting was going on for a year, no doubt. And so there were stages where, and I've lost lots of lovelier passages than there are in that.
Yeah.
There are some really nice transparent.
This photograph and then go, oh,
Yeah,
left
that's right. So indeed, the process of putting something aside and getting it out again is very much a part of it.
Do you do that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's part of the process. I mean, working on things progressively and deciding. And actually, you know, I like to, mirror finished things and put them against the wall for 2 months and pull them away. And if they had an impact, and when I look at them again, you can say, oh, that painting works. The one next to it didn't. That one's not kind of doing its thing. But for me, I find there's two processes, or there's three processes. There's one, there's me in the studio making something, and I make it to whatever degree it needs to be made. And, sometimes it's very rough. There's also different finishes I'll enjoy painting, and lots of different languages in painting. Everything from photographic realism. We'll stop there. We don't have to talk about that. There's lots of touches in painting, different languages that you can utilize. So I might use different languages depending on what I want, and that dictates a certain feel that I want. Other times it's very improvised, like Joe Frost, like that conversation with the painter back and forth and find out how far it needs to go and how it exceeds my expectations. Now, and the next thing is the painting. So then there's that process of me being satisfied. Then there's the object itself, is a thing that is in the world. But for me, the final stage of finishing is sharing it with someone at a show. Again, that's why, having it in a place like this, in the context of, and my sort of strange thing in landscape, which I can, you can see the peculiar technique. I'm happy to have it framed within the context of this general show with another landscape, so it's received and shared in that space. So it's the sharing, and it's the imagination of the viewer, which is the completion of the work for me.
That's very
The responses you get from public and people.
And the variety of interpretations.
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful thing about, art generally is, it's not. One thing we're all doing this together. This is the great opportunity. We're doing different things, and there's lots of different interpretations, different ways of interpreting painting, but there are also different interpretations from the viewer. I think there's a content in there, and something about. I don't think I went to all that, but there's something something fascinating.
The way things are received is very, very interesting. So I have to say I've never exceeded my expectation.
Maybe that sounds like too
No,
much of a claim, but you know what I mean.
No, exactly. You walk away and you think, yeah, okay, that kind of on a level works, I suppose. But yeah, I kind of always think that I'm going to paint the best picture of it. There's going to be some moment where I actually the scales fall from my eyes and it actually becomes clear what it is that I'm doing. But it's not happened yet. And every time it's new. Every time I don't really have a way of approaching something that is uniform, which I think is a problem for me. My work is quite scattered in terms of its language and its handwriting is not always recognisable. So I wish I was more able to do that, but it seems to elude me.
But isn't it, artists, it's the excitement of not knowing what you're going to come up with, what you're going to produce that when you go to the studio and you're working on all the different things, and that drive of the unknown, what's going to come out of you and onto the canvas is what drives you to go every day back to the studio, or being really pissed off that you haven't had a chance to go to the studio for a few days, Certain people will know, well, they haven't done this. Is that like...
Yeah, no, there is. I don't really feel quite the very old-fashioned word that my grandmother used to use, but I don't feel censored when I'm not working. And that's why, as I said earlier, the competitions and the kind of deadlines that you can meet within a year as an artist in Sydney are actually for me kind of profoundly helpful, because it gives me a kind of not a goal exactly, but a way of actually structuring my time. So that's another reason for entering these things. Like I was saying, even if you don't stand a cat and horse shots, you still imagine the kind of making something that will have a kind of audience in a way that sometimes your work doesn't. Sometimes I make pictures that no one ever sees, well, quite often actually. You know, just never get shown things that I think, well, maybe someone should see it, but you know, maybe you're going to show a schedule or for whatever reason, and that makes it quite difficult. You know, so this is the possibility of being viewed.
So, and leading on to another question about the art prize, or even it's not just the art prize, but other art prizes. Do you, this goes to all of you, do you create pieces for a specific prize in mind, where you just, you know, doing your stuff, and then you know, this prize, you know, this is the art prize coming up, I'll have a crack at that, or are you painting specifically for certain prizes? I'm sure maybe Joe.
Yeah, I never paint for prizes. I only go in a few. I'm not someone who goes in them, who chases them a lot. I just wait. Occasionally, I think, oh, that might fit this prize. That's as simple as that. I think that, and I also don't really like deadlines. I don't find that they help make my work better. I think that my work just needs to take as long as it needs to take. And
I think my problem with not having a deadline is the 7 years I spent painting from life, where I produce one picture every 10 weeks. So the ability and the freedom to make a lot of work and produce volume, which is not always quality, I admit, but that gives me that kind of I think, like you said earlier, I need to make the work. I need to make the work, you know, and that sort of helps me do that, because I think there's nothing like actually being in the studio making to sort of push you. And well, for me, it has helped me develop something over the years. Whereas fearing it and holding back, as I did for so long, it sort of ruined that creative kind of energy. Because I think you need energy, don't you, to make work. Well, I do, and I don't always have it.
I've done both methods.
Yeah, no, me too.
Sometimes I have painted for a particular show, for a particular competition, and other times, but that's not the rule more often than not. It's more like Joe. I just work and I follow my practice, and then I go, oh, this painting is fit.
Yeah.
And what are the dates? You know, oh, that prize is coming up. Okay.
A bigger question. The Paddington Art Prize, the criteria for the prize is inspired by the Australian landscape. Landscape, is it just us Australians that really get off on landscape and seeing landscape? Do you think it's just a particular Australian thing, or it's more broad? Are there people?
No, I think it's quite Australian actually. Coming from a place where, you know, we had turn, I suppose, but landscape it was a much more cerebral process, I think, in the painting. Certainly the school I went to, it was never, I mean, I painted from life, but a lot of people made work that didn't relate to anything. It was purely an internal kind of narrative. So it seems that a lot of Australians do enjoy working on the landscape, and that it's kind of highly prized and valued here culturally, which is, you know,
Yeah, I think that's the word, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's held in high esteem here, landscape painting. I mean, Joe, you
I don't. Landscape is a word that I think I don't use as much about my own work. So, but that's a different thing. You're asking about. Yeah, in Australia, sure. It's a big deal, isn't it? And probably the view of 20th century Australian art history is that initially distinguishes itself from European art history by virtue of this new subject matter that asks artists to experience painting in a different way and form a different language. And that has its roots in the 19th century, really. But that's a 19th, 20th century art historical fact about Australian art, even though there would be people who would say there were always other things going on, and there were. But yeah, the interpretation of a different continent has been a distinctive thing. But for me, I would rather talk about response to place than landscape. And the reason for that is that I think the compositional schema that are implied by the word landscape are, to me, they could open up something else, but that's not the way I've managed to make paintings relate to place in a way that pleases me. So, in a sense, I've brought the dynamics of abstraction into the representation of place to make something that, if I'm really honest, probably isn't a landscape. If by landscape we mean a vista, a transcription of a scene where here is the foreground giving over onto the middle and background.
I mean, I don't think my process has been sort of very representational either. It is a very abstract process, organising circuits. But I'm guessing mine was in the right line. That's what
And I feel like landscape, the word landscape, especially in the art world, it's much broader than that sense of, standing high up on a hill out in the country somewhere and looking down at the plain and seeing that. I think landscape now is what you said, Joe, what you like, its place. That's really modern day interpretation of it. My landscape is, my landscape's the street outside,
I think it could be an internal landscape.
and an internal landscape as well, which might be what we look here at art.
I mean, you're right. That's right. The landscape does live largely in Australian art, but I think the landscape, politically and historically, even the idea of terra nullius is fascinating, representational things superimposed on the continent to the detriment of the First Nation people here. But in terms of the idea of landscape, it's actually a history of landscape painting is fascinating. And the way I think about landscape painting, I'll get back to how it relates to history. I think about it as a nature painting. What is nature? And it could be dealing with place, but what is nature? And part of what has guided me and more directed my consideration of what the landscape is not connected with the European tradition so much as connected with the Chinese and Japanese tradition of landscape painting, which is arguably older. And I would venture to say, we can argue about this, I think it's more sophisticated and more subtle and more developed by at least 1,500 years more consideration going on that. Part of that is a totally different philosophical and metaphysical system underpinning it. Now, the interesting thing about European landscape painting, which developed in the Netherlands, the first European landscape painter was the guy named Joachim Wittner. The first landscape paintings, he just took out the religious figures and had the background there. And then they started painting the Netherlands. The interesting thing about the Netherlands, it was completely terraformed at the time. It was a trade center in Europe. The whole landscape was constructed by humans, canals, windmills and all that stuff. It wasn't a lot of what I see happening in painting today. It's kind of still the philosophy of the landscape ethos that developed in the early 19th century is still happening now. Not surprisingly, it's fine. No problem with that. But I think some of the interesting interventions in landscape now are how people are starting to bring in this different sensibility. Now, there's all sorts of philosophical ones, so that underpins that 19th century romantic painting. I'm just in the German terms, we can go into the subtleties of it, but there's a whole different world that you're starting to come up now. I think part of that worldview, part of the fulcrum that sort of this whole idea is starting to lever on is the ecological situation we're dealing with. What is nature? What are we? What is nature? What is that? It's kind of a question. It's a question that's not solved for us, but it's a question which I'm going to stop there because we go on all the tangents. But anyway, that's roughly the collapse of that I can think of the landscape.
Do you have any advice for artists entering art competitions?
It's interesting. Actually, maybe you can speak to this. In the UK, there are competitions, but not anywhere like Australia.
No.
So I think there's something peculiar and interesting in Australia. It's almost like we love sport. And they love it so much they turn art into sport as well. Fine, but I think as a young artist, and this is the advice, enter it as a lottery at odds.
Yes.
Don't base your self-worth around it. Have fun with it, and applaud the people who get who
It is
do
a
well
little-
and win. But just enter them in a light way, and don't, again, it's very easy to get upset. We're all, and artists are very sensitive people, so just take it easy, have fun, and realize it's a lottery with better odds, and it's not,
Unfortunately, though, what I would say is that it does impact on a person's kind of, profile and, the kind of attention that they get from the press. I mean, it kind of winning something here does actually matter in a way that I find quite extraordinary. But, so it isn't without its consequences.
Yeah, you're exactly right, but just as I don't want to rubbish anything, but I just want to be real about the politics here in this situation. You're right, it does impact on your career in a certain way. But there are circles of art in Australia, and it impacts negatively, actually, even entering these things. Like there's a whole bunch of artists who do not take part in any of this, who are fascinating artists, who are amazing, and they really don't. They don't like this.
They would laugh at us.
Yeah.
Yes, they would dismiss us as fools.
And that's not to say, they're not correct. That's not to say. I just see it as different manifestations of art, different social manifestations of art. And I like both of them. I like the ones who are just, they make their very esoteric works, whatever that is, and they have their special cue to show it in, and that's fine. And then there's these forms like this,
And that's good too.
Yeah.
I think there's times when it's helpful to be hostile to art prizes and resist them, and other times where you just think, oh, what the hell, I'll give it a go. This time around, I was on that part of the cycle.
Yeah.
I say it's useful to be hostile to them because they are looking. I mean, as wonderful as the attention is brought to art, and that's hard enough to do in our society. So art prizes help achieve that. But I'd love to see at some time in the future a slightly different model evolve that allowed for the kind of diversity of the art that art prizes do allow us to see, but with maybe not with the same kind of podium of winners at the end of it. But I don't know quite what forum or what model that would be. But there's something about anointing someone the winner that just seems to close down everybody's intelligence and turn the whole thing into a kind of a hooray, rather than drawing out the ideas or the.
But this does do that. I mean, what we're doing now, that is the kind of manifestation of that.
I suppose so.
Where you actually.
I think it's about making it, bringing the audience with you, the prize format, rather than about the dialogue being in terms of the artists would conduct it, give it a chance. Anyway, that's that, isn't it?
Yeah. All right. Well, someone's got to get the money.
That's right.
But that's thank you. But that is a way of. Well, I mean, look, I was shocked when I came here when I saw the number of prizes, and I think that it actually increased. I think there's like more and more and more of them, which is great if you're getting some of that money from the pool. But if you're not, it's kind of like, well, where do I turn? Is it worth entering? Should I bother? Does it raise my profile? What does it do for me? How do I benefit? And it's not always clear. But today I'm very grateful. And I was to win that other thing. It actually injected money into a sort of slightly failing small business, which is my practice. So that was really well received. But in terms of what it does to your profile, that's kind of, I think it's. I mean, there are people who've won the big prizes who actually it's kind of destroyed them. They've been unable to do anything after it, which is quite extraordinary. The expectation to continue producing.
Is it a high level or of that same
That's the problem that people, have to keep producing very similar images so that they're recognisable. And that is a danger. That is a real danger. That does, I think, destroy people's ability to develop as artists. And that's an ancient story that's been part of the narrative for centuries.
The reason I know Marlene wanted to start the Paddington Art Prize was when she was an art dealer up in Paddington 20, 30 years ago, over the years, she'd always get a lot of artists coming in showing her work, and there weren't enough months, weeks in the year to show all these artists, and there were people that she really loved their work, and she was just in that space. And that then one night she had this epiphany, I'll do an art prize, so at least artists that haven't got any representation will have a chance to be shown and to feel like just a walking, like you're not just painting in your garage at home. What am I doing this for? You don't get a bit of recognition and maybe meet other artists and things like that. And so I think the Paddington Art Prize has grown because of that ideal of Marlene's to give a chance or somewhere to unrepresented artists will at least show their work. And I think when you go around and see in this art, in the Paddington Art Prize each year, there are a lot of unrepresented artists. So it's not just like named artists from certain galleries get selected. It really, everyone gets a fair go. And all the different, and you can see a good cross-section of the styles of landscape painting that's going on at the moment. It never falls to, you know, solid abstract or photo real or whatever stylized stuff. So I think, you know, the Paddington Art Prize has grown each year and will grow again by maintaining this sort of, what's the word, an even, a fair playing field for everyone that puts stuff in. And it was, I saw all the works when they were coming in, and there were just so much good stuff, and the judges really, really had a hard time this year selecting the works. Anyway, I'd like to finish the talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you.